But I could also sense his sympathy for my predicament. I remembered how fragile Amos had looked after Set took over his body last Christmas. When he'd gone to the first gnome for healing, I knew he'd felt guilty about leaving us alone. Still, it'd been the right choice for his sanity. Amos, of all people, knew what it was like to need to get away. If I stayed here, if I left on a quest straight away without even time to breathe, I felt like I would explode. Besides, I felt better knowing Amos would be covering for us at Brooklyn House. I was relieved to give up my teaching duties for a while. Truth be told, I'm a horrid teacher. I simply have no patience for it. Oh, be quiet, Kata. You weren't supposed to agree with me. Thank you, Amos, I managed. He stood, clearly indicating that the meeting was over. I think that's enough for one morning, he said. The main thing is that for all of you to continue your training and don't despair. We'll need you in top shape to defend Brooklyn House. We will prevail. With the gods at our side, Ma'at will overcome chaos as it always has before. The trainees still looked uneasy, but they stood and began to clear their dishes. Carter gave me one more angry look, then stormed inside. That was his problem. I was determined not to feel guilty. I would not have my birthday ruined. Still, as I stared down at my cold tea and uneaten pain de toilette, I had a horrible feeling I might never sit at this table again. About an hour later, I was ready for London. I'd chosen a new staff from the arsenal and stowed it in the Duat along with my other supplies. I left the magic Bullwinkle scroll with Carter, who wouldn't even talk to me. Then checked on Jazz in the infirmary and found her still in a coma. An enchanted washcloth kept her forehead cool. Healing hieroglyphs floated around her bed, but she looked perfectly frail. Without her usual smile, she seemed like a different person. I sat next to her and held her hand. My heart felt as heavy as a bowling ball. Jazz had risked her life to protect us. She'd gone up against a mob of Bao with only a few weeks of training. She tapped into the energy of her patron goddess Sekhmet, just as we'd taught her, and the effort had almost destroyed her. What had I sacrificed lately? I'd thrown a tantrum because I might miss my birthday party. I'm so sorry, Jazz. I knew she couldn't hear me, but my voice quavered. I'll go mad if I don't get away. We've already had to save the bloody world once, and now I have to do it again. I imagined what Jazz would say. Something reassuring, no doubt. It's not your fault, Sadie. You deserve a few hours. That just made me feel worse. I should never have allowed Jazz to put herself in danger. 6 years ago, my mother had died channeling too much magic. She'd burned up closing the gate to Aphrodite's prison. I'd known that, and yet I'd allowed Jazz, who had much less experience, to risk her life to save ours. As I said, I'm a horrid teacher. Finally, I couldn't stand it any more. I squeezed Jazz's hand, told her to get better soon, and left the infirmary. I climbed to the roof where we kept our relic for opening portals, a stone sphinx from the ruins of Helios. I tensed when I noticed Carter at the other end of the roof, feeding a pile of roasted turkeys to the griffin. Since last night, he'd constructed quite a nice stable for the monster, so I guessed it would be staying with us. At least that would keep the pigeons off the roof. I almost hoped that Carter would ignore me. I was not in the mood for an argument. But when he saw me, he scowled, wiped the turkey grease off his hands, and walked over. I braced myself for a scolding. Instead, he grumbled, "Be careful. I got you a birthday gift, but I'll wait until you come back." He didn't add the word alive, but I thought I heard it in his tone. "Look, Carter, just go," he said. "It's not going to help us to argue." I wasn't sure whether to feel guilty or angry, but I supposed he had a point. We didn't have a very good history with birthdays.